Welcoming into the show, retired U.S. Army and Marine veteran Jason Nelson. Jason, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Stacy, for having me on.
We've seen over the weekend, and there will be continued strikes into the week. We don't actually have an end date on that. And of course, there's always rumblings of war. People are afraid this is going to result in another war in the Middle East. But the Biden administration has announced that they're finally going to take action to stop bad actors. These are people and individuals who are terrorists, who are sponsored by the nation state of Iran. They're proxies for them, and they're making war on our U.S. soldiers in the region. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you think is going to be next?
Well, one of the things I do want to point out that is a real difference here in foreign policy is that the idea of talking about that you're going to make a retaliatory strike against people who've killed U.S. troops, the idea of projection of power by the United States of being a first world military power that is able to, sort of accomplish global peace, if you will, or at least maintain global hegemony, is because of the fact that people are genuinely afraid to attack us because they know that without question there will be retaliation. So the fact that we're actually discussing this openly now and talking about how we're going to do this, it sort of lacks the credibility that an instantaneous strike and decapitation of a unit or a power structure within that region would. I think what we're seeing right now is a weakness in foreign policy that has led us to the point where Iran and other bad state actors feel that they have the ability to show areas that they want to increase their sphere of influence over, that we have less of the ability to defend not only ourselves, but them, and that they are a risk. So they must choose to either ally themselves with Iran or continue to be at the risk of whether or not the United States is going to be able to protect them. And as we saw in Afghanistan, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, there's obviously a lot of questions about whether or not the United States is going to keep its promises.
Yeah, so the point you're making there is an excellent one because I think I saw articles written over, well, it was last week on Friday. There were people who were writing about the fact that some of these individuals, the terrorists themselves, were evacuating their bases. They have these little bases where they operate out of. They were evacuating because Biden went and made an announcement that we would be striking back, which is the reverse of what I saw when I was on active duty. When I was on active duty, the only people who knew we were going to be doing a strike were the individuals in the unit that was involved. Everyone else was completely oblivious to it until afterwards. And then there would be a news story, US strikes this one or that one, this many killed or destroys this base or what have you. We are doing things in the reverse order of what is effective, not just for us, but for our allies.
When you're bringing up an excellent point right there. So there's a big difference between, let's say, when you're trying to minimize human casualties. And when I say by that, I mean civilian casualties in a region, and you're doing a force on force movement between two major armies, obviously making the announcement that an area is about to become a conflict, that there's going to be kinetic activity in a region. We primarily do that because we want to move civilians out of the way. When you start telling people that, hey, we see you, Houthi terrorists, we see you at these posts here, here, and here, and in 3 days we're going to send a strike team. Don't worry, we're going to wipe you out. That sounds essentially that's what you're doing. You're projecting what your move is going to be, so you're allowing them to move materiel, you're allowing them to move people, you're allowing the leadership to move and flee and reestablish a base somewhere else, and it makes for great optics when you can see that an F-18 has dropped a bomb somewhere, and we can see the explosion on TV, and Biden can go out there and say, hey, we did things. But in reality, did it actually have an impact? Again, just the fact that these attacks are happening in the first place and as proxies for Iran should give us pause and make us understand that we have enemies around the world who are no longer scared that we will retaliate in a way that directly impacts them, that they can work through proxies. And we've been seeing this across the world, whether it be in Russia, whether it be through China, whether it be through Iran, that right now we're being bullied around the world.
Yeah, so there's a sense of weakness about that because I'm just, let's say you have no military experience at all. You know that one of the things that our own law enforcement does is they will have speed checkpoints and they don't announce it. Now, I know in some areas like California, you'll see them have a big announcement. We're doing speed enforcement. And so everyone's driving the speed limit and thinking, yeah, we know you're doing speed enforcement. You told us. But for the most part, speed traps are surprises. And the reason they do it as a surprise is because the inference there is you're supposed to be driving the speed limit. If you're caught not driving the speed limit, that's your fault because you're breaking the law. And so then you get a ticket and it's a harsh lesson, a few $100s out of your pocket and a huge annoyance for you because you weren't obeying the law. In this case,
Well,
they're going beyond that though because this is simple. They're killing Americans. So they should be struck back at in a much more forceful manner that is a surprise.
Well, I think you're bringing about actually an excellent analogy. So, you know, the United States, by projecting its power, whether it be through Marine Expeditionary Units or aircraft carrier groups, we're able to forward project power into a region, and that acts almost as saying, "Hey, we're out looking for speeding." Drivers. And if you turn around and you sit here and say, well, on the second note, we're going to go with the speeding ticket. Like you said, we're going to set up a speed trap. Well, that's what we should be doing in areas like the Mediterranean, the Persian Gulf, the Horn of Africa, where we sit here and we know that we have kinetic activity and we need to be able to shut it down immediately. But there's the final aspect, and as California does it very well, they do the aerial drones that track license plates, and they sit here and get your speed, and then they send you a ticket, meaning you got attacked and you got punished and you didn't even know that you were being watched. And I think that that's the point we're talking about, is the idea of being able to conclude a policy, a foreign policy that says when you conduct bad things against the United States interests and especially against the United States troops, that rather than us just warning you, that you're already dead.
So my desire is that they would act that way, not out of a sense of being a Republican or a Democratic administration, but because our military is so good at that. Our US Armed Forces are actually excellent at executing the kinds of responses that you're discussing. We have everything we need at our disposal, but we don't have the leadership in place that we need to actually get it done. You ran for Congress. Do you have any other political aspirations as we're closing out here?
I do plan on running again eventually, but I made promises to my constituents and I'm still fulfilling those promises. And more importantly, I feel like I have the opportunity to share and impact the world right now. So, I have every chance that I can to get out and go out and share the message of where we sit in our foreign policy, our border crisis. I'd like to go out and be able to articulate that to people because I believe as Americans, we have a responsibility to share that information. And thank you so much for what you do, Stacey. You do an amazing job and people appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you for being here. We look forward to talking to you again. Thank you for the analysis. We will talk to you again, Jason Nelson, and we'll be back with more Stacey Washington Now after this.